Hey guys, it's Barry here. Get Slydewayz. We've been off for a couple of weeks here, so we've kind of revamped the shop a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit of man. We got some really cool stuff to talk about tonight. We'll get into that in just a second. So before we get started, everybody go to the be sure and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram. We had a really good month with TikTok add-ons. Picked up a lot of new followers. Had some really good videos go a long way. I want to throw this out there. So we've had a couple of people mention to us about sponsorships. So if you are interested in sponsoring our show, give us a shout, shoot us a message. We're going to have some different packages out there that you're able to get a hold of, with some signage in the background behind me, maybe some signage right here on the table. There'll be little tickers going along on the bottom of the screen, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in getting on board with us and doing a little advertising with Get Slydewayz with us, we'll be happy to have you guys on here. So the last couple of weeks, we had to do a little rerun here and there. We had a couple of good shows that we had lined up, and then we just couldn't quite get on the same page with the guests and get them in here. So we'll continue to work on that and get you some good content. I did the old front end on the old GTO over there. That got some pretty good reviews. People like to see that. I like to kill myself with a front spring, But anyway, that's good stuff. But tonight we have a really special guest in the house with us. We have Mr. Chad Chaffin. Chad, if you guys don't know, is a former NASCAR driver, former fairgrounds star here. The big deal. He's been running round track. Golly, Chad, how many years you been in an old race car?
Well, I started when I was 13. I'm 56 now, so I've been racing for 43 years.
That's awesome. Like, I was digging around in your Facebook and even on Google to find some cool pictures of you we always do that little promo to show who the guest is going to be this week. And I found that little picture of that little green car, I guess, at the fairgrounds, and probably a 18, 19-year-old Chad Chaffin, something like that. Looked like he weighed about $110.
Yeah, I was nothing but a beanpole.
There goes the dog.
Dog's interested in that. Yeah, my wife says when we got married, I was nothing but teeth and nose, and nothing else. Nothing else. I was so thin for so long. But yeah, I was just a kid, and I started racing. I was so young, I couldn't even drive to the track. So my dad he was racing at the fairgrounds. I started Highland Rim. He had to get one of his buddies to literally drive me to the racetrack so that I could race.
No kidding. Yeah. So, like, you were 13. What'd you start out in?
Well, today they have a division called the Front Runner division, which is a four-cylinder front-wheel drive car. We didn't have front-wheel drive cars in 1982, so it was just called four-cylinder street stock or something like that. So I drove a little... it was a Datsun. They didn't even call them Nissans then. So I drove a Datsun 1200, which was basically the car before the B210, which that was a very popular car for a lot of years.
But the square body looking little car, yeah.
The Datsun 1200 is what I raced when I started.
How about that? And it was, of course, four-cylinder and rear-wheel drive.
Four-cylinder rear-wheel drive, and so very similar to the rules they have today in front-wheel drive. It was just kind of the car at that time. And those little cars weighed a pound per cc. So if you had a 1600 cc engine, your car had to weigh 1600 pounds, have you. So that's why we ran a Datsun, because you could get a pretty powerful engine at, say, 1500 cc. And then you'd have a really light car. So my dad built me a really fast car, and so I got to start in a good fast car right off the bat.
Was anybody running Mustangs yet, or that came later?
There was a lot of Pintos. And then the Mustang 2, I guess, is what you would call that. We're talking, but those cars with either the 2000 or the 2300, even though those engines make a lot of power, just trying to get a 2300 pound car around a corner. And I had a 1,500 pound car.
Oh yeah,
even though they had more engine, they couldn't get around the turns because we had to run like a spec tire. So the lighter car was faster.
Was the way to go. How about that? So that was at Highland Rim?
Highland Rim Speedway, yes. Yes, I couldn't race at Nashville till I was 16. So I raced at Highland Rim for about 3 years before I got to go to Nashville.
How about that? So when you did get to go to Nashville, what was that? That was in the same kind of car on the little quarter mile?
No.
Or did you go straight to the big leagues?
By that time, they were running, when I started racing, they were running what they call Grand American cars. So Sterling Marlin, Mike Alexander, these Camaros.
Oh.
They were 1981, 1982. Camaros was the predominant body. And then somewhere in about 1985 or 4, I guess 84, they started the late model stock car division. Joe Carver brought that to Nashville. It was something that was big in the Carolinas and Virginia. Oh. And so we started running the perimeter cars, the late model stock cars that they ran for about 15 years or so down there. And so that had just started, and we built one of those. And that I did not have a very good car. so I started out in a really fast car, and I won a bunch of races. And then when we moved to the fairgrounds, it was a struggle. We built our own car, and it was a Nova, had leaf springs, and it had a hell of a motor in it, but it wouldn't get through the corners very good. I didn't know better, so I overdrove it, trying to make up for it. So it was a struggle for about a half season, and then the next year we got a little better piece to race.
Oh, so like those Camaros you're talking about, is that those I've seen that they sit real low and they sit so low they had the front fenders humped up over the tires and all that? Is that same kind of?
Yes, it's just like that, and that a lot of those cars, you see a lot of stuff on Facebook. Gary Ballou and them guys down in Florida, and they had to really look like the cow catcher noses and all that.
Long sloped out nose.
Beautiful cars.
Yeah, cool looking.
It's amazing what they knew about aerodynamics back then.
Back even then.
I don't think a lot of people knew a lot about aerodynamics, but down in South Florida and way up in Michigan and stuff, those guys were sharp. There's a lot of full-time racers, and they really had some radical stuff back then. I look at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh.
How did they figure that out?
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's some crazy looking old cars. That's wild.
Yeah.
So I remember when I first met you, first time I came over to your dad's place to letter a car. We were hanging out, we were talking about it, and I see all these Hooters Pro Cup checks up all over the wall up there. So you ran in that old Hooters Pro Cup series.
Correct.
So that's what was so funny to me, because like when I was coming up and I had started racing dirt, the old guy that I was driving for over in Knoxville, that was his dream. He wanted to own a Hooters Pro Cup team. And we had come, like right before I moved to Nashville, and that was 04, I guess. Right before we came to Nashville, we had come within an eyelash of getting a sponsor and buying a team. We already had a team over in the Carolinas all laid out that had 8 cars and, all the equipment and shop and all that stuff. And we were about to buy that team if this sponsorship had come through. And I was about to be in that Hooters Pro Cup. And it was so funny to me that when I first met you and I'd come over to letter a car for you, and I'm like, golly, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. It'd been funny if we'd have ended up, because what was the years on that? That was before that.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly, and that was really a blessing. That probably saved my racing career. I had raced in Nashville, had a lot of success, and then so I did what naturally you want to do. Anytime you and not to sound like I'm bragging, but it got to the point where I was at Nashville, I'd won I won everything. I almost couldn't lose in there for a little while. So we had to go bush racing. It's called Busch Grand National now. It's called, what's it called now? Xfinity?
Xfinity, yeah.
It was Busch Grand National then. So, of course, we decided we're going to go Busch Grand National. The problem is, going from late model stock car to Busch Grand National, it's not a step. It's like a mountain, So
jump, yeah.
I did some bush racing for Wayne Day, and then we decided we'd get our own stuff. And, wow, I worked on Busch cars out at my dad's house, and we had our own paint shop, and I had 4 or 5 dedicated guys and 1 full-time employees, and we were putting in 100-hour weeks.
Wow.
And we built us 2 or 3 cars over the winter, but we were totally out of our league. So we had these Busch cars sitting there, and Hooters had a series. It was just called Hooters Cup. It wasn't called Hooters Pro Cup.
Okay.
And but they were going to have this new Pro Cup division with these full-size stock cars, because Hooters Cup was kind of like that Grand American series. They're offset cars, Camaros, and these little 2,800-pound cars with the offset chassis and the coil-over suspension and all that. Well, a Pro Cup car was basically it didn't have to be an outdated Busch car, but that was what the intention was.
Yeah.
Get a Busch car, but we're not going to put a aluminum head, dry sump, $40,000-$50,000 engine in it. We're going to run kind of like a late model stock car engine in a Busch Grand National car. So you could get an engine, and a lot of these guys already had them, so they go pick them up a car for 10 or 12 grand, just a roller, and you go racing.
Wasn't it Hess? Hess was one of the big chassis.
Billy Hess.
Billy Hess.
Yeah, Billy Hess. Yeah, he was. He worked at BSR, and then he went out on his own. He built a very good car. He had done some work for me. Laughlin. Hutchison, Pagan. They were probably the three best chassis builders, and so it's kind of funny. We got wind of this new division coming up, and I did not even. So I had a Busch car. I pulled the motor out of my late model stock car and put it in our Busch car. And we're getting ready to go racing, and we don't have any headers that'll fit. I put my late model stock car headers on in the car, and they hung down so low they were only this high off the ground.
No.
And I called Don Schoenfeld of Schoenfeld Headers. Everybody's heard of him. And he knew who I was. I said, Don, this is Chad Chaffin, and here's what I'm doing. And I'm in a bind. My headers, I can't race. I got to have headers to race. He built me a set of headers that day, put them on a Greyhound bus from Arkansas to Nashville. I picked them up at the bus station, literally out of the belly of a Greyhound bus at 2 o'clock in the morning, and put them on the car, and we headed to Lakeland that same afternoon. I got them 2 o'clock in the morning. That afternoon, we just headed to Lakeland, went down there and won the race, first race I ever had, and it just turned my racing career totally around.
Lakeland, Florida, right?
Yep.
Is that 3/4 mile?
It was a 3/4 paperclip track, and it's a great track, beautiful track. And that was the inaugural Hooters Pro Cup race. And we went, sat on the pole, won the race, and it really, it probably saved my career because we didn't know what to do. We didn't know to go back to Nashville.
Yeah.
We knew we couldn't compete in Busch. I done spent all my dad's money. And so we were kind of at a crossroads. We were almost done racing.
Oh, gosh. What was on the car then? I'm trying to remember.
N&S, Foreign Car Parts. Yeah, my dad's
right.
salvage yard that I worked in with him, and we were sponsored by our own salvage yard.
That's right, N&S. That's
Yes.
right. Are they still here in?
There is still an N&S. My dad sold that, but they carried on the name. It was a good name.
I thought so, yeah.
And so there still is a N&S Foreign Car Parts, or it may be American Parts now too, but there's a salvage yard still called N&S.
I got you. That's cool. So how many years did you run? Okay, so that first year you didn't know what you were doing. You just dove into this new series. How'd you do? How did it turn out?
It turned out really good. So we won the first race. And the funny thing was, the race was in February, so it was right around the Daytona 500. It was actually in conjunction with that whole two-week Speed Week thing. You know, Speed Weeks used to be a really big deal. They had the 24 Hours of Daytona and the ARCA race and the qualifiers, and it was just
even the
it was about a week.
Guys were down there.
Absolutely, it just went on for a couple of weeks, and so we were part of that, even though we're in Lakeland, but that's only about 75 miles away. Well, then they had a layoff of about 2 or 3 months before the next race was like April.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of them guys called up. If we could have ran 5 or 6 races, I mean, I was going to clean their clock, because we were I'd had a little bit of Busch experience, and I had just enough experience in those cars that I had a leg up on them, and they didn't even know it. You know, they didn't know what they didn't know. Well, by the time we showed up next race, Mario Goslin and these guys, they had done. Gene Morgan, a guy named Gene Morgan, was a great competitor, and he was a former Snowball Derby winner. So we're talking, Gene Morgan was a big time racer in the South Carolina, won all kinds of races, but he'd won the Snowball Derby. So he shows up, and I'm like, man, this guy's won a Snowball Derby. This is a big deal.
This is serious.
And he was a great guy. We had a lot of fun racing together. And so I finished second in points that year. I would have won the points, except I got a call to drive for Joe Nemechek in the Busch Grand National race at Nashville in the Bell South Mobility car.
The 42 car.
87 car. It was just like the 42 car.
It was just like the 42 Cup car.
It was like the 42
Had the
Cup
rainbow
car.
on the front is blue and white. I remember that.
It was number 87. It was Joe Nemechek's car. Bobby Hamilton put the deal together for me. Nemechek called Bobby, and here's the story Bobby told me. He called Bobby, and he said, hey, I've got to run this car in Nashville. My sponsors, Bell South, is based out of Nashville. They're sponsoring the race, but I can't be there. I'm going to have to hire a driver. And he said, I got the guy you need to hire. And of all the people, he referred me to that ride, and I got that ride. So I had to miss one of my Pro Cup races, and I lost the points. I just barely lost the points, but I wouldn't go back. I mean, driving that, having that opportunity was awesome. And I got to meet Joe Nemechek. We became friends, and you know, he was a great racer. He built a lot of his own stuff.
Yeah.
Very innovative, and Bobby Hamilton was so innovative, and I really like that. I like real racers.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are true blue, 24 hours a day. They're thinking about it all the time, and I really love being around people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, was that just a one-race deal? Where was that?
That was at Nashville.
That was at Nashville.
It was
at
a
the
one-race
fairgrounds.
deal at the fairgrounds. Qualified pretty good. I think he was satisfied because we stayed friends, but I got into a wreck, and wasn't my fault, but, you know, wrecks are wrecks. So we fell out of the race, but we were running really strong. I think we were running 6th or 7th at the time.
Oh, wow.
And Joe Bessie, I can remember all this kind of stuff. I can't remember. When you're into racing, you can pull stuff out of your memory 30 years ago. And he got together with somebody and spun out right in front of me, and I hit him, and it didn't really hurt the car, but it tore it up enough that we couldn't be competitive after that. It probably had the nose knocked off of it or something, you know.
Yeah. So what did that lead to? Did that relationship stay? Did that lead you into the Busch Series, or did you go back to Hooters Pro Cup? What did you?
Well, yeah,
what was the next season?
Well,
like,
that's the thing. Well, I finished out that season, and that's when I finished second in points, and that was at 97. So that didn't really lead to this, but something always leads to something else.
Yeah.
So before I did the Hooters deal, I didn't race the year before that, and I fielded a car for Brad Baker, Gary Baker's son.
Yep,
Gary Baker that owned Bristol Speedway, and he had the lease at Nashville Speedway.
Yep.
Well, his son got into racing, and he came to me and asked me would I build him a truck and mentor him and all this, and I wasn't really racing at the time. Like I said, my future was, and so I actually did that the year before the Pro Cup deal. And then that's why I told you I didn't know. I thought my racing was kind of over. I'm just going to work on other people's cars and stuff. And so then we did the Pro Cup deal. Well, in doing this deal for Gary Baker, I met the CEO of Logan's Roadhouse.
Oh.
And his name is Ted Moats. And he wanted to sponsor me. He was sponsoring Brad Baker, and he wanted to sponsor me. And I said, is this going to be a problem? And he said, no, it's my money. It's not a problem. So I asked Gary, and you know, Gary didn't care. I don't think Gary Baker needed the sponsorship money.
No.
I think he wanted the name on the car just to look as though, hey, we've got a corporate sponsor and we're legit. It's not just me paying it out of my pocket. So, but it was a real sponsor for me. I mean, I really needed the money.
Yeah.
So the next year I ran Hooters again with the Logan's Roadhouse sponsorship.
Red and yellow car.
Red and yellow
remember
car.
that.
And
Yep,
we
I remember
won
that.
3 or 4 races that year, finished maybe 4th or 5th in points. Wasn't as good a points year. We had a couple bad races that kept us out of the points, but we were very competitive, sat on poles, led races, won a few.
Yeah.
So, and then that helped me got the attention of Ford. And then we did another Busch attempt. We bought another car and went Busch racing. I qualified 10th in my own Busch car.
Oh, wow.
And I qualified 8th at Nashville in a Busch car and 10th at RP in a Busch car. And then I got my first ride.
No kidding.
The first ride when I say I had driven for Wayne Day. So even though that was technically a ride, that was just let's go race races. But this was the first time someone called me in the office, put my name on a contract, and started sending me paychecks in the mail every month. So that and gave me a car to drive around. So that was my first real ride.
Oh, that's cool.
I left Forest City, North Carolina, with a Ford Expedition as a company car and a contract. So that's a ride.
Nice, that's a ride. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we're going to take a little short break here. Man, that's cool. So we've come from a 1,500-pound Datsun at Highland Rim to now we're driving for Ford in the
correct
in the what's now the Xfinity series.
That's
All
right.
Cool. So we're going to take a little short break. We'll be right back here in a minute. Be sure and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram. Watch us live. We'll be right back. Get Slydewayz with Gary Clapp. Hey guys, listen, if you need a livery on your race car or a wrap done on your commercial vehicle, give the guys down at Graphic Effects in Murfreesboro a call, 615-896-4301. They are the best in the business at what they do. If you need a mural done inside your business or outside on a brick wall even, they can do it. If you need a logo on your garage floor, they can do it. They specialize in commercial wraps, but they can also do the single color stuff, cool looking stripes, anything else you can think of. If you need a banner, if you just need stickers, if you need something cool for your race car, give these guys a call. Graphic Effects down in Murfreesboro, 615-896-4301. Check them out.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Finch with Finch Performance, and we're just going to take a quick little peek around the shop here to see some of the different things that we work on around here. So first up, we've got some chassis in production. We've got a small backlog right now, but we're knocking out some 67 to 72 C10 stuff. We've got a really cool 67 crew cab Chevy here, C10. We've made a custom one-off Apex Predator chassis with long arm suspension all the way around. This thing's going to be pretty badass. 56 F100 with the Coyote 10-speed. Just all we got left here is really getting the supercharger installed, finishing up the wiring and a little bit of the fuel system, get it fired off. And then, of course, we're back on our Ferrari 308 custom project here with the LT5 engine and a Graziano 6-speed transaxle. So this thing is going to be full kill, badass. And that's just some of the things we do here. So we don't just build trucks. We build a lot of everything. Main thing is we have a good time, because that's what it's about.
Hey guys, welcome back. Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. We're having a good time here tonight. We've got Mr. Chad Chaffin in the house telling some old NASCAR stories, man. Old NASCAR, old limited late models, old late model stocks. What else would you call? Golly, you've driven just about everything, hadn't you?
I've driven them all. Now, Well, I started at the very lowest.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't start in go-karts. I really wanted to race go-karts.
Yeah.
I was 13 years old, and I told my dad, would you get me a go-kart to race? And he said, well, I've never raced go-karts. I don't know nothing about them. I wouldn't know how to tell you to drive them.
Yeah.
He said, but I'll build you a 4-cylinder street stock. Of course, I mean, I did 90% of the work.
Yeah.
Anything that was just hard labor, like tearing the seats out of the car and getting all that tar rubber off the floorboard and all that with a torch and a scraper. It takes you about 4 days of doing it.
Yeah, we've done it.
I did all that, but then when it come to doing anything technical, he did. But that's how I got into stock car racing. I really didn't want to race a car. I mean, I didn't even think that was an option. I just wanted to race go-karts.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I made it all the way up to Nextel Cup, and now I'm back. Last couple of years, I ran an Outlaw late model.
I've seen the pictures for JR, right?
J.R. Weist.
Yep.
I started driving for him. We were kind of rivals in some stuff before, but now we're really good buddies, like kind of like a brother. And so that is just like the pro late models that they race at Nashville, with a little more restrictions on the suspension. We can't run bump stops, and in certain shocks we can't run, and we run an 8-inch tire.
Oh.
So those restrict the car. But then on the bodies, it's kind of wide open. So you have a very aerodynamic body, kind of like the bodies we were talking about, the wild
I've
child
seen the
bodies.
Pictures. It almost looks like a dirt late model, but with a rounded roof, like an asphalt roof or something.
It looks like a dirt late model, and the roofs are real little. The roofs don't go all the way from the right to the left door. They only cover about half the car.
Oh.
And so we did that the last couple of years, and won 2 championships. Raced at Montgomery, won a championship 2 years in a row there, and won. I think we won 7 or 8 races with that car, maybe 9 races we actually ran it 3 years. I'm wrong. I think we raced 3 years, and won 2 or 3 races down at Watermelon, and won some races in Montgomery. We raced twice at Nashville in that car, won both of those.
Wow.
So we were doing pretty good, and but I told him, I said, it's kind of, they weren't going to run them in Nashville, and we're winning everything at Montgomery. And so I was like, this is just rinse and repeat. Let's do something else.
Yeah.
So we bought a CRA street stock. So now, I mean, like I said, you go up and then you go down, and now I'm way down here and getting my doors blown off. But we're fixing to start winning some of them. We raced twice, and man, it was a lot different than I thought. We bought this car and didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I called a couple of people to kind of pick their brain. The funny thing, they won't tell me nothing.
I can't believe that.
I couldn't get any advice. Well, it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, only because I've always helped everybody. If anybody calls me, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
I don't tell them everything, but I answer their questions, and I answer them truthfully, and I try to help them. And when I needed to just say, hey, I'd like to know, just kind of get me going in the right direction. Boy, I got a bunch of hauling around. I said, okay, that's fine. So I just told JR, we'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
So went to the track, and our car was super duper loose. I couldn't hardly drive it. And the slowest I've ever been at Nashville, I think I was running in the 23s.
Wow.
And it's the scariest I ever been in Nashville. I was slow and scared. I mean, it's
sliding around.
Going. You would have loved it.
I'd probably be fine in that car.
Yeah, you talking about getting Slydewayz. I was getting Slydewayz going into the turn, and that ain't good for someone that
don't feel real good.
No, not if you're used to just trying to go straight. That's all I know. So I wasn't very good at the Slydewayz driving. But this last race, I changed a bunch of stuff on the car. Not really springs and stuff, a bunch of really roll center stuff, and I think we'll do some winning here pretty soon.
You're running on a big track, right?
Big track, yes, and it's CR street stock. They don't have spoilers. They're like 88 Monte Carlo. So if you think about the old Dale Earnhardt, blue and yellow Wrangler car, that's what we got now.
Gotcha.
Stock chassis, stock lower control arms, and stock steering box. The rear suspension is the standard 4-link stock suspension. You can't modify it. So it's a throwback division for sure.
Less money to run that?
It's less money, but this is something about racing. It's a very competitive series. They race them all over Indiana, Kentucky, and CRA. It's just one of their divisions. So money's crept into it.
Yeah.
A competitive car is probably $35,000. Sure. So it shouldn't cost that much.
Yeah.
We used to build those cars for $7,000 or $8,000.
Oh yeah.
But the reason they're so expensive now, see, everybody used to build their own car, like you and I are talking about. Now you get someone to build it, and there's actually more hours in building one of these than building probably a Pro Late model. So you may have a stock Chevelle chassis, but by the time a guy takes that, cleans it up, sandblasts it, and builds a roll cage and does all that, you got a $15,000 chassis because he's probably spent 200 hours building it, you know.
That's right. I mean, I think about when I was running dirt, golly, all the way back in the late 90s, and we did that with a 70 Nova. I cut up a 70 Nova Super Sport.
Oh, yeah.
It was a real Super Sport. I didn't know no better. I cut up a 70 Nova Super Sport and made a dirt car out of it. But yeah, that's what we did. It took a year to build that car.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yes.
Because it was a unibody. We had to do subframe connectors, cut holes in the floorboard, and run a piece of 2x3 from the subframe back to the back of the frame where it connect, and weld all that together and weld the floor back up around it. You could see them sticking up through the floor, in the back seat back there.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. The first car I raced at Nashville was a Nova, and it was stock.
Yeah.
And so we were down there racing this Nova, Leaf Springs, a whole 9 yard. Now I'm only 16 years old. And I don't know why I was unsupervised or something. I don't know what my dad was doing or whatever. So I'm going down the front straightaway, and we throw the drive shaft out.
Oh, God.
And so what are we going to do? Man, it's Saturday afternoon. You can't get a drive shaft. Well, my dad's salvage yard was ran out of a place called Wilson's Garage. So Max Wilson owned a little garage here in Woodbine, and he rented my dad the back lot, and that's how he got started in the salvage yard. Well, one of Max's sisters was an older lady. She was a widow, and she had a 77 Nova. So
I see where this is going.
it's Saturday afternoon. I'm down at the track. We don't even have cell phones in, so I drive up there. It's only a couple miles from the track. I knock on the door. Oh, God, I'm embarrassed. I can't remember her name, but let's say her name was Miss Minnie,
Yeah.
I knock on the door. Hey, Chad, how you doing? I said, well, I'm doing good, Miss Minnie. Would you mind if I borrowed your car for a little bit? Well, sure, honey. Here's the keys. She didn't ask me what I needed for, where I was going, or anything. She just, because I was always over there. Because when I was a little kid, I was over there. Their house was next door to the junkyard. And I borrowed her car. I took it down the track, took the drive shaft out of it, put it in my race car, and raced. Now, if that thing would have broke that drive shaft, I don't know what I'd have told her.
I love it. And then after the race, have to hurry and get it back.
I put it back in, took her car back. Sure did.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And she never knew. Did you ever tell her?
No,
tell your
no.
dad?
Well, he had to know, but that's what I'm saying. I don't know why he let me do that. That don't seem like something he would let me do, but he had to be there. So, like I said, I don't know how I got this pulled off.
We're gonna have to get him on the phone.
He won't remember, I don't think. But no, I never told her. And the thing was, she wouldn't have cared.
Yeah,
she wouldn't have cared. But no, I thought it would have been a whole lot easier to get forgiveness than to ask for permission. Can I go strip your car to run this race tonight?
Can I jack your car up and pull the drive shaft out of it? No, you can't. That's fantastic. When was that? That would have
been 1984.
Wow.
That was when I first turned 16, because it had to be that year, because that was the only year I raced that Nova.
Oh.
And so I was 16, and it was the first my year at the fairgrounds, and I don't know why we threw the drive shaft out, but we sure did. And then, so a lot of times you lose a drive shaft. It's a scary thing. That thing usually breaks right behind the driver's seat, and it's beating the devil out of the floorboard, and it can come through there. And sometimes they'll hit the track and kind of pole vault the car.
Yeah.
None of that happened, so thank goodness. Probably just got a sledgehammer and beat the tunnel back down. Put a drive shaft in it and go.
Oh, that's good stuff. So there's you a good how-to, guys. Anytime you get to the track and have a problem like that, just look for one out in the parking lot.
Scope out all your friends and family and know who has cars with, compatible parts. That's a good start.
All right, so you mentioned all the way to Nextel Cup. It was Nextel Cup when you ran, right? So you got in with Ford. Let's go back to the Ford thing.
Nextel.
You got in with Ford there on the Bush ride. What was that all about? Who was that for? What was the deal with that?
Well, that was pretty good. That was the Lear Racing team. and it was owned by a couple of UAW bigwigs.
Oh.
And but Jimmy Means was the team manager.
Yeah.
And Jimmy
Means drove in Cup. Yeah.
We ran out of Jimmy Means' race shop, and Jimmy was really good to me. He was great. He taught me a lot, and then the cars were pretty good. They weren't really winning cars. I don't think we had winning equipment, but we had really good equipment. We were one of the Ford factory teams. I don't think we got everything that some of them did, but these UAW guys that owned my team, I went to Michigan to meet with them. And so while we were there, this guy was the head UAW guy for Ford. So UAW will have a head guy for Ford and a head guy for GM, head guy for Dodge, and then one other guy that does all the other ones. That's the way it was set up at the time. And we was going from restaurant to restaurant, and we would sit in the back of one of these restaurants, be it an Applebee's or a bar or whatever, and these people would come in and make requests. My cousin, he got in trouble at work, or they caught him doing this or doing that, and he was, okay, I'll take care of it, So, man, I felt like I was with the Godfather.
Yeah,
we did this for
mafia.
about 4 hours.
Yeah, you were in there with the mafia leaders.
Absolutely, man. It was unbelievable. And so these guys owned our race team, but not on paper. They were not listed as the car owners. And so, so whatever. I shouldn't be telling this, but it's 20 years ago. They're not in racing anymore. But it was quite an experience. And Jimmy was good to me. He put an ARCA car together for me to race a couple ARCA races, and so I ran that deal. And then I don't know. I got fired. That's what happens. You got to get hired before you can get fired.
Sure.
But there's a lot of hiring and a lot of firing in NASCAR.
Yeah.
You watch the races, you see Jimmy Johnson, you see Jeff Gordon, you see Dale Earnhardt Jr. Well, you can't fire Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's so popular. But there's a lot of people that get in there and they stay and they become superstars and household names and all.
Yeah.
But there's a lot nowadays. You don't see the turnover because I think the drivers bring a lot of the money. But before, when I was doing it, the drivers didn't bring the money.
I see.
And there were a lot of us that ran in the middle to the back of the pack, and we was getting fired and hired all the time, And it's kind of like that in the NFL. The average career of an NFL player is only about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you see Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and all these guys, they play for 15 years.
Yeah.
But it's that second string defensive tackle
journeyman.
You don't know his name, and he gets drafted and he plays 3 or 4 years, and when his first contract comes up, he's gone, and they draft another guy to take his place. And that's so I was kind of probably somewhat in that realm where my job was almost on the line every week.
Wow.
And so it was tough. It was a lot of pressure.
Pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Golly, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a shame. Like had to be like that back then. Because like now, a kid, like you said, comes to a team with a couple $1 million. Grandma wrote a check, and he's got a ride for a year.
He's going to have a ride for a year, and that's really good for the driver because you got to develop the driver.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I've had deals where I was in very fast vehicles, but the crew chief's philosophy of how to set it up was different than what I wanted to feel in the car.
Oh.
And we just didn't really jive. And it wasn't that he wasn't good, because he obviously didn't get to where he was by being a dummy.
Sure.
I didn't get to where I was by not being able to know how to drive, but I didn't. And I could drive his setup, but I couldn't win with it. Because the difference in driving his setup or the way I really want it may be a 1/10 of a second or 1/1500th of a second. Well, that's an eternity when you're talking about being a 3rd or 4th place car racing for a win, or being a 12th place car trying to dodge all the wrecks, and that's just kind of the difference.
When in those bigger, longer races, 1/10 of a second spread out over 250 laps, that's a big deal.
A 1/10 of a second is a few starting positions at the beginning of the race. A pit stop, if your pit crew ain't quite as good as it, that's another 2 or 3 spots you lose every pit stop. And it compounds throughout the course of a 200-lap race.
That showed its face. So, like our buddy Clay Greenfield that did the same thing you did and is still trying to do the truck thing. There was one year where he had bought a truck. I think it was a Roush truck, and it was a truck that had either won or finished in the top 5 the year before and didn't get tore up.
Yep.
So it had the right body on it, had the good body on it, and he had bought it. and he went down and he qualified third at Talladega. You remember that?
Yes.
And then in every time there was a caution, he went to the back.
Yeah.
Because of his pit stop.
Yep.
And then here he would come back, and he drove that truck all the way back up into the top 10 3 times.
Yep.
And then when he'd have to pit, back to the back.
Yep.
And then he ended up getting into some kind of little altercation with old Matt Crafton that bent the nose a little bit. But, they have so many green-white checkers at Daytona that the last one, you remember, he was on the front row.
Yeah.
And but he ended up finishing like 8th because the nose was knocked off.
Yeah, he couldn't go.
If it had been the truck that he needed, that was his shot, man. That was his shot to win one.
I had a really good ride. I drove the 30 truck one year. That's the one that you have a picture of me upside down in.
Yeah, the Germain
the
Racing.
Germain Arnold
Toyota.
Racing, yes. So I got to drive that truck about half a season, and but that was really a crazy deal. So Todd Bodine was driving that truck, and they were going to hire me to be his teammate. I was driving for Bobby, but this Dickie sponsorship went away. Bobby said he wouldn't be able to bring me back. We didn't have a sponsor. And Bobby put in a good word for me at the banquet and all, and these people was talking to me. So Don Arnold hired me to be Todd Bodine's teammate. And so the Germains bought into the team. And so Todd Bodine ended up leaving, so I became the main driver, and we brought in another driver, brought a bunch of money. His name was Shigeki Hattori. He still owns a team, but he's a Japanese fella.
Okay.
And I just called him Shiggy. And so we started in 2005, but the crazy thing was, and then Arnold left after about 3 races. So after Bodine left, he realized he'd made a mistake. This team he went to race for was called Fiddleback Racing, but they had run out of money real quick. This is one of these guys that got in, had all the money in the world.
Oh, boy.
And he didn't have no money.
Then he started spending it.
He started spending it, he ran out quick. Yeah. So we no more and got to the first race, and Bodine was already trying to backdoor his way back into the ride. And I was an Arnold guy. Don Arnold loved me. The Germains loved Todd Bodine.
I see.
So I wasn't long for that ride. And one day we were at Atlanta, and we had the fastest truck. I started 5th or 6th, and I drove to the lead. And we pitted, and I come out of the pits, about 7th place. Drove back to the lead. Pitted again, come about 6th place. Well, now there's only about 40 or 50 laps to go in the race.
Oh, boy.
And, business picks up.
Yeah.
So I done passed Bobby Labonte twice. And he was driving in one of the is a number 47 truck, maybe AC Delco. I don't know. It was sponsored by Chevrolet. It was some Chevrolet division.
Black and white and gold.
Yeah, black, white, and gold.
Yeah.
And of course, Bobby Labonte's a great race car driver.
Yeah.
Well, I went to pass him the 3rd time, and he wasn't having none of it. He about put me in the wall off turn 2. And he was like, yeah, you can pass me on lap 25. You're not passing me on lap 182, of a 200-lap race. So so I ended up finishing maybe 5th or 6th. And Toyota, man, they sent that team, they just ate them alive. They said, Chad drove so good. He did this. He did that. We were so happy with his performance, but y'all going to have to fix this. Now, Todd Bodine done won 3 or 4 races a year before. Mm-hmm. Well, that didn't sit good. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they treated me like a redhead stepchild from that day forward, and it was about 6-8 races later, and I was out.
Wow.
Todd was back. Fiddleback shut down, and I was out. Todd was back in. And then the people bought the Fiddleback team, so Toyota put me in that ride. So I finished out the year in that vehicle. So Toyota, they were looking out for me. It's just one of these deals. I'm not saying it was stacked against me. It's just one of them things.
Yeah.
Racing is a dog eat dog world.
Absolutely.
And I probably didn't know how to play the game very good.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. Holy cow. All right, guys, so that's 2 segments. Let's take another little break here while you're going to the refrigerator to grab that sandwich or drink or whatever. Be sure and hit YouTube or Spotify, TikTok, Instagram. Give us a like and a follow. We'll be right back. Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. Hey guys, listen, if you need a livery on your race car or a wrap done on your commercial vehicle, give the guys down at Graphic Effects in Murfreesboro a call, 615-896-4301. They are the best in the business at what they do. If you need a mural done inside your business or outside on a brick wall even, they can do it. If you need a logo on your garage floor, they can do it. They specialize in commercial wraps, but they can also do the single color stuff, cool looking stripes, anything else you can think of. If you need a banner, if you just need stickers, if you need something cool for your race car, give these guys a call. Graphic Effects down in Murfreesboro, 615-896-4301. Check them out.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Finch with Finch Performance, and we're just going to take a quick little peek around the shop here to see some of the different things that we work on around here. So first up, we've got some chassis in production. We've got a small backlog right now, but we're knocking out some 67 to 72 C10 stuff. We've got a really cool 67 crew cab Chevy here, C10. We've made a custom one-off Apex Predator chassis with long arm suspension all the way around. This thing's going to be pretty badass. 56 F100 with the Coyote 10-speed. Just all we got left here is really getting the supercharger installed, finishing up the wiring and a little bit of the fuel system, get it fired off. And then, of course, we're back on our Ferrari 308 custom project here with the LT5 engine and a Graziano 6-speed transaxle. So this thing is going to be full kill, badass. And that's just some of the things we do here. So we don't just build trucks. We build a lot of everything. Main thing is we have a good time, because that's what it's about.
Hey guys, welcome back. Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. So that was like, I was here. I had moved here in like 04, beginning 04, going into 05. You ended up coming down to the fairgrounds to kind of help with, what were you doing? You were trying to help with on-track stuff. I remember being in a driver's meeting and they introduced you, and Chad's going to help us here at the fairgrounds to make everything great.
Yeah, that was awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it lasted how long?
About 20 minutes, I think. What happened was, it didn't go over real good. What had happened, the car count was getting low.
Yeah.
And they wanted to converge two different divisions of cars,
Wasn't that the limiteds and the trucks?
So, yeah,
I had a truck at the time, and that's what I was trying to.
I think straight rails had something to do with it. So I had decided something to do with straight rails, because I remember I said, well, we'll put weight on it and all, and I had 2 or 3 guys say, if we put that much weight on our car and we hit the wall, it will rip the chassis apart. Maybe not. So it just didn't work. Someone called me and said, well, if anyone knows how to make all these cars equal, it's Chad. Well, in theory, I kind of came up with a good formula, but I don't think it worked. So I don't remember being involved after the drivers meeting and maybe one race. I remember pretty good, but that had to be a big flop, because I don't remember anything about
all I remember about it was being in the drivers' meeting. It was out there.
It was in the
stands.
In the grandstand. Yeah, I remember that.
And they brought you up there, and I thought, I know I've seen this guy race. This will be pretty cool.
Yeah. And so I don't remember. I can't remember none of the details of that. I don't even remember who was running the track at the time.
Wasn't it Mattioli still?
Probably was. It was probably Joe that called me and asked me. And how could I say no? I mean, I had to try.
Yeah.
He asked me to see if he could put this stuff together,
Yeah.
and I said, well, sure, I'll give it a whirl.
Was that in the days when the?
That had to be around 09, 2010 or something.
So it was after that he was. It was before that. Then he had got the idea to run the big track stuff on Friday nights, and the quarter-mile stuff on Sunday afternoons, to not compete with Highland Rim and Carthage that were all running
Carthage
at the same
was
time
running
too.
at the time.
Yeah, so he had changed. He'd called it the Music City Motorplex. Remember that?
Yep.
And he had moved all the big track stuff to Friday night.
That didn't work, did it?
It didn't work, but a year or two.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, Saturday night is the night for local racing. I mean, Friday people have jobs and they got to get off work and get
Rivergate.
there. It's hard.
I worked in Rivergate, so I was hauling my truck and trailer to work in Rivergate, trying to get off a little bit early to fight 24 traffic coming into town to get all the way down to the fairgrounds, sitting bumper to bumper in traffic to try to get that was not fun.
No, you can't race on Friday nights.
I didn't do that
it's
much.
very hard to race unless you have some of these small tracks that do it, but they're running these kind of lower divisions where you don't need a lot of practice. You just kind of show up, you roll it off the trailer and race.
Can't hardly do that on a big track.
No, you got to have your stuff together. Your car has to be prepared right. You can't have a loose shock, if you're going 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's not good. I went down. I come out of the pits one time in my truck, come around the apron, started down the blend line, went to fourth gear, and the shifter come off in my hand. And I was going, oh, my God. I had the whole thing, the linkage, everything come loose from it. All the bolts were down the back stretch. So I spent 2 hours in the pits trying to put my transmission linkage back together. That was a great day.
Yeah, when we moved from Highland Rim to Nashville, it was amazing. We would have these engines built, and they would run so good at Highland Rim. These drag racing guys and all build these engines. Put them out there on that big track.
Build them loose for you.
Them thing will,
yeah,
they were loose all right. You get a bucket out there and sweep up all the parts.
I remember that from the dirt deal in that old Nova. Everybody talked about, let a drag guy build your motor. He'll build it real good and loose, and it'll really hum.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it'll hum.
It sure did. It left oil all over the place.
It sure will, yeah. I mean, if you're going to race a quarter mile, that's fine, but they weren't. Yeah, I never had much luck with drag racer guys' motors, and they were all smart guys. It's just a different thing.
Animal.
It's just a different thing, yeah.
It's just a different animal.
Yeah.
So I raced 06, 07, maybe 08 in that truck. I only got to run that was back when we were running 18, 19 races, 20 races a year.
Yes.
And I only got to run basically what they're running now, 6 or 7 times, because I just couldn't afford it. And I was just trying to play. The first time I took it out there, I had bought that old truck from the Rymans, Charlie and that bunch. Mm-hmm. And he let me run the motor that was in it one race just so I could, get my feet wet.
Yeah.
I'd never been on a big track like that. I had raced it. We ran it Atomic, which it was pretty fast, but it was a little bitty third-mile dirt track.
Yep.
And we ran it Smoky Mountain, which it was 4/10, but it wasn't banked a lot, so it wasn't real fast. And then I'd raced at Highland Rim a handful of times in a street stock.
Right.
And I jump into this truck, and I go down there, and we went down there on one of them Thursday night practices, and he was like, hop in it and take it for a lap. And I'm like, you don't have to show me where my points are here.
Right,
and so he took me over to the wall, and he's like, let off right there, get back in it right there. And I'm like, all right, And I first went out there, what I had driven, I had never felt a car take a set. Even though running them dirt cars, them old street stock Novas, any of that stuff, them old Highland Rim junk, street stocks, I had never felt that. I'd heard about that.
Yes.
And that was the first time I ever felt something really take a set, was in that truck on that 5/8.
Right.
And I about wrecked it because it felt like a right rear tire fell off of it.
Yeah.
It went down in the corner and it went bang like that. And then I went, whoa, what was that? And I thought, oh, that's what that was. It's ready to go.
That's when it was telling you to go.
Give me some gas. So the next time I went down the corner and I timed it, in my mind I timed it. And as soon as I felt that, I hammered it, and it stayed all the way around through there.
Yeah.
It felt so good.
Ain't that something?
I'll never forget that feeling.
Oh, I know. I've made so many laps there, and when I think about I'm going to the track, and I think about that sensation of just being wide open and coming off the corner, and I still get butterflies thinking about it. You get a little nervous, I'm like, I hope when I go down there everything sticks, and then you get out there and then it's just like it won't go fast enough.
Yeah.
Once you make a couple laps, you can't go fast enough. But as you're thinking about it the night before, the morning before, you're just like, whoo, it's gonna be something. I still feel that way.
I love it. That's fantastic. 20, 30 years into it, how many? And it's still brand new when you roll through there.
That's why you love it.
I love it. All right, guys, we're going to take another short break. Be sure and, call your neighbor and tell him to listen to this thing. He's missing out on some really good stories here. NASCAR stuff, a lot of good stuff. YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram. Give us a like and a follow, and let us help us grow this audience. Give us a shout, okay? We'll be right back. Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. Hey guys, listen, if you need a livery on your race car or a wrap done on your commercial vehicle, give the guys down at Graphic Effects in Murfreesboro a call, 615-896-4301. They are the best in the business at what they do. If you need a mural done inside your business or outside on a brick wall even, they can do it. If you need a logo on your garage floor, they can do it. They specialize in commercial wraps, but they can also do the single color stuff, cool looking stripes, anything else you can think of. If you need a banner, if you just need stickers, if you need something cool for your race car, give these guys a call. Graphic Effects down in Murfreesboro, 615-896-4301. Check them out.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Finch with Finch Performance, and we're just going to take a quick little peek around the shop here to see some of the different things that we work on around here. So first up, We've got some chassis in production. We've got a small backlog right now, but we're knocking out some 67 to 72 C10 stuff. We've got a really cool 67 crew cab Chevy here, C10. We've made a custom one-off Apex Predator chassis with long arm suspension all the way around. This thing's going to be pretty badass. 56 F100 with a Coyote 10-speed. Just all we got left here is really getting the supercharger installed, finishing up the wiring and a little bit of the fuel system, get it fired off. And then, of course, we're back on our Ferrari 308 custom project here with the LT5 engine and a Graziano 6-speed transaxle. So this thing is going to be full kill, badass. And that's just some of the things we do here. So we don't just build trucks. We build a lot of everything. Main thing is we have a good time, because that's what it's about.
Hey guys, welcome back. Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. We're here with Chad Chaffin in the house, telling some really cool old stories, man. You do. Andy Johnson called me and told me you need to tell Chad to tell some stories, because he said you got some good ones. And it's been good tonight. It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun.
This is good to just tell the old stories about that. You know, most of my listeners are probably the kids in the drift world and whatnot, and I've given them little tastes of what I've done in the past, but they don't have any idea. They don't know what we went through to try to race and do all that stuff back in the day, because you know they work hard to put their little 240s together and their stuff, and drifting's come a long way. And we've gotten to where we're running Corvettes now, where we used to just take a 240 and put a big motor in it and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, it's I mean, I'm not very familiar with the drift, world and all, but it's just where we're at as a society. Mm-hmm. When I was young, there was no such thing as drifting.
Yeah.
I mean, people did burnouts in their cars and stuff, but nobody thought you could really learn how to do this and do it right, and
drove
build a competitive
down
car.
a dirt road or down a gravel road or something like that.
And I think the Fast and Furious movies really brought a lot of young people who want to get a car and lower it, put the mufflers on it, and all the cool stuff they do. And because when I was a kid, it was muscle cars, but people drag raced or stock car raced, and that was just what we did, because that was just, and so now I think this is a lot more popular with the young people. It's something you can put together and kind of drive it to where you want to go and participate. So it's not like a race car where you have to, you go out there and you get it tore up and you're constantly rebuilding it and all. So it's a great sport. I mean,
I'll tell you something different about it too. Like some of the kids do actually do that. They'll drift their daily driver. They'll have somebody bring some extra tires and wheels in a truck, and they'll drive their car up there and they'll slide it around. I would never be brave enough to try to do that, because I drive a little too wild for that. I'll tear something up and then I'll be stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do have some guys that do that. Literally take their daily drivers up there and slide them around, and have their buddy bring a pickup truck full of spare tires and wheels.
My father-in-law, Gary Binkley, I married into the Binkley clan, so it doesn't mean a lot to a lot of your listeners, but anyone's been around racing, so it was kind of like a Hatfield McCoy, Romeo and Juliet thing. I fell in love with the little Binkley girl, and she fell in love with these snooty Chaffin people. And but they got into a deal where they went to Huntsville, and they had to pull the engine out of the tow truck, put it in the car to race it.
Nice.
I mean, kind of like my drive shaft story. So, you do what you got to do.
That's right.
You wouldn't do that now. But the things we did, it's crazy. You look back, and it's just a different world. It's just a different time.
It really was. It really was. That was a good time. I tell people about cutting that 70 Super Sport Nova up, making a dirt car, and they just look at me like I'm crazy now. But back then, it wasn't that big a car, wasn't that popular deal. Didn't really think about it that much.
No, no, it wasn't. It wasn't a classic car then. It was just a car. And in your fault, you thought, well, I could take a Nova, or if I take a Super Sport, I'll have a really fast car.
Yeah.
Them little emblems didn't make a whole big difference, did they not?
Mean nothing. I had that emblem on my toolbox for several years, but that's about all it did for me.
Yeah, that's a fact.
That's good times, man. That's been a lot of fun.
Yep.
So you have two sons that did a little racing.
Yes.
They, I remember I used to letter a couple of things for them every once in a while. One, they both run trucks. One ran a truck, one ran a car. You kind of
they both started in 4-cylinders. Chase was a little older, so he started first, and I had built him a Honda. It is a car I bought and rebuilt into a new body, and he won a lot of races, and he did really good. And then Chaz got old enough to race, and I needed a challenge, so I built for him a Volkswagen, a GTI. I took a Volkswagen GTI, built a car out of it, and he won a lot of races. You think I would know better, but so a Honda, the engine's on the left. So if you're wanting to go around left-hand turns and you have a car with the engine on the left, that's an advantage on the get-go.
Gotcha.
Plus, the Honda has great, you know this from drifting,
Sure.
the Honda has fantastic suspension, geometry, especially a Honda Civic. You look at the things from the back, and they look like they're this wide.
Yeah.
It's amazing how wide a 1990 Honda Civic is. It's crazy. It looks like it's built to race.
Huh.
Well, I built that Volkswagen, and the engine's on the right. So when you have an engine on the right front and you're trying to go around a left-hand turn, it gives you some distinct challenges that I didn't have with the Honda, but I figured some stuff out and got big enough sway bar and stuff on it to keep it from picking the left rear tire up, and he had a lot of fun. So then they moved up. So you were lettering cars for me, and Chase was driving pro late models, and Chaz was driving trucks.
Yep.
Chaz won a truck championship down there and won some races, and Chase won a truck race one time. He only ran a handful, and I think Chase had a little bit of everything Chase did was my first time. The time we raced a limited late model, it was my first time. The time he got to race pro, that was my first time. So I was learning with Chase, and Chaz was a couple years later. So he had a little better leg up each time than Chase did. So finally, I got to repay Chase, and I let him drive my truck one time. I'd raced a truck for fun a few times, and we'd won some. So I said, here, I'm going to let you drive something that's prepared to win. Because when he first started racing Hondas, he was winning everything. He had the fastest car, and he was doing really good. Yeah. So he went out there and won a race in that. So I was glad he got to do that. Because it was kind of like my little brother's winning everything. Yeah. And everything you give me to drive sucks, you know.
Yeah.
He didn't say that. I'm saying that, but that was kind of the case, you know.
Did they ever say, hey, Dad, we want to go a little further, we want to go try to make it, or what did they have that kind of drive, or?
I think they would have loved to, but I think they knew. They had saw the struggles I had went through, and you were beginning to see a lot of money trickle in, even into pro late models right now. It's a very expensive division, and I think what happened is as the drivers started bringing more and more money into Cup, and these teams started building their own cars, a lot of these car builders now are building the pro late models. A lot of the people that worked for the chassis builders and the body builders in Cup, now they don't build their own bodies. A lot of these really awesome fabricators are building the Hamke cars, the Port City cars, the Fury cars. And so they're costing so much. You go over and buy a race car. I mean, these things are beautiful. And they're $150,000 race cars, and they're taking them to the fairgrounds to race. And it's just, it kind of doesn't make sense. But
it really doesn't.
But racing's an addiction, and there's people that will rent these cars that don't have a race team or a shop or build their own, and they'll pay big money to drive these cars. So Willie Allen has a driver development program.
Yeah, and the Fetchos just started one. I saw that. Yeah.
And so these drivers that are coming driving those cars are footing the bills, and it's not cheap. And so you're basically a professional level of racing. There's still some hobby racers, amateurs, guys like me that still just do it after work or in the garage. But there's a professional aspect to it now that there wasn't 15 years ago. So it's one of them deals where I told him, I said, you're not going big time racing, because I can't quit my business to help you get there, and I sure don't have $3 or $4 million sitting around to do it with.
Yeah, just to send you up there to Kyle Busch or something and write him a check.
Exactly.
I've wondered about that. Like I've seen. I used to letter Willie stuff back in the day, and then he kind of told me he wanted to start doing more and more things in house, I literally told him what printer to buy, what kind of vinyl to use, all of that stuff.
Yes.
And helped him kick off what he calls War Ink now.
Right.
And that's been great, because he's an hour and a half from me, so I don't have the time to run all the way out there and do stuff for him anyway. So they do all their stuff in house now, but he does driver development. So I guess they put it out there for guys that are looking to further their careers to come and drive their equipment, and
that's exactly
teach them how to. Is that how that works?
That's exactly right. And like I said, it's very expensive. I don't want to throw out any numbers. I know what the numbers are.
Yeah.
But when you look at building your own team, buying $100,000 truck and a $100,000 trailer, so you have a $200,000 rig, you need a shop full of equipment and surface plates and full-time help. When you look at trying to build a team of Willie Allen's caliber, and now he has the Rackley Roofing is a part of that. Sutton is the name.
Curtis, yep.
Yeah, and the young boys are racing now, so I don't mean that as the boy, the young man, and he's doing really good. Dawson, he's doing a great job. He's winning races.
Yes.
And so, but that's what they do. So if you want to race a car and you want to be competitive and be in a fast car and you don't have the know-how or all of the other stuff, it's probably not that expensive. I mean, you rent that car for 10 races, you're going to spend a lot of money, but go buy your own tractor trailer, your own rig, build your own shop, you're going to spend 3 times as much. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But that allows the Willie Allens of the world, because of their income generating businesses now, to put a product on the track that a lot of guys just can't match that. They don't have the technical advancement. They're not working on their cars 8 hours a day with 10 guys. Some guys building shocks. This guy's got data acquisition. They're learning. And I'm not one to be jealous. It's not a jealousy thing. It's just a fact. You have these guys are professionals. Yeah. And it's really a shame. As great a driver as Willie Allen is, I almost hate to see the fact he don't race anymore himself, because he's a fantastic race car driver. And when I watch him race down there, I'm amazed at. Every time I watch him race, I say, well, he ain't gonna win tonight. Tonight ain't his night, and that's about the time he flips the switch and he goes. I don't think that's quite was my style. I wanted to lead 125 laps of a 125 lap race, and he's very smart. He's probably like a David Pearson or something. He's a very smart driver, and he really does good. I wish he raced more himself, but I think it pays better for him to run his business.
Sure, I know. I remember I was lettering some of his stuff when he was winning when he was running trucks, and he won that. He told me the story about when he won that Rookie of the Year in the trucks, and they tried to sabotage him out from under winning that Rookie of the Year because they had already sold his ride. They just hadn't told him yet for the next year.
Oh yeah, he was racing
for Thor Sport, running the 13 truck.
He's running the 13 truck. That's right.
And they tried to sabotage the truck right before the last race of the year because they didn't want him to win Rookie of the Year because they knew they were going to let him go and he wasn't coming back already.
Oh, wow.
And he was smart enough, he understood setup enough that he was smart enough to fix it and still ran good enough that day to win Rookie of the Year.
Wow. That's cool.
That's a really neat story.
Yeah, Willie, he still builds shocks on the car I'm going to race next week. He builds the shocks on it.
Wow.
Yeah, nice. And it's been a few years since he built mine, so it's probably not as good as what he has now. Not because he wouldn't give me the best, but I mean, it's just for my car, the way it's built. It's a car we built ourselves, and it's at the time it was the shock I wanted him to build. He built me exactly what I wanted. Yeah. So I trust him, guys. I mean, Willie's a fantastic chassis guy and everything.
Yeah, it's really neat to see how well he does with the chassis, how he understands setup as well as be a good driver too, because that guy's kind of rare.
And I think when you go to a track and you have this thing called data acquisition, and so a lot of your viewers will understand, but what it is, you put a computer, you hook up a lot of acquisition equipment on the car. It will tell you the shock travel of every corner, the steering input, the throttle input, and you can map that all the way around the track. Maybe you have 20 different places, and so you get a map of the track, and you can take that data and you use that to set up another car. But here's the thing, the data doesn't tell you how to set up the car. Someone has to drive the car to get it right. Then you take those numbers and all of that. Then you say, okay, this is the way the car's supposed to drive. Now take all this data and put it on that car and that car and that car and this car. And I have to believe that's Willie that drives those cars.
Yeah.
So he's the computer.
Yeah.
He's the real computer that sets the baseline that they take all of the data off of. He's the one that says, let's try this shock. I like that shock. Now we can let our driver development guys have this shock, or I can sell this shock to Scott Fetcho, or I can tell Michael House about it, or just whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he develops almost all of that stuff behind the wheel, because that's where it all starts.
Yeah, I know he's a particular son of a gun.
Yeah.
If it ain't right, he don't like it.
Exactly.
I run into that just stickering cars for him.
Wow.
I run into that, and his beautiful little wife Kristen, she's the one that's in charge of making stuff look good over there now. And I bet you if they,
you think he gives her a fit, huh?
Oh man, I bet you they don't talk about it much.
She does. Well, she does really nice work. I think she's come a long ways. Her designs are really cool.
And
she does good,
and she's great. And she and I share files back and forth sometimes on different stuff. And she's a real fun one to deal with. Because they actually print their own stuff in house, but they don't, like, she wraps those trucks by herself.
Really?
She wraps those race trucks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
But she don't want to do nothing else. And they'll call me when they've bought a new hauler or something, and here, we'll print it, but you come and lay this sucker.
Yeah. Well, that's hard.
You don't want her hanging off the side of a ladder.
But I don't know many people that can do what you do. You lay that vinyl on there and you rip it off and you put it back on. I'm like, how do you do that? I just know how to work it.
That's right. We did that big black hauler in your driveway that time.
That thing is beautiful. It was a beautiful thing.
It's been fun. We do enjoy laying vinyl, me and Micah both. And now Mr. Jimmy here, that's our producer on a little show, he's actually an installer for us too now.
Okay. All right.
So he's come a long way.
I thought he was a professional show producer.
He does pretty good, doesn't he? He keeps things going pretty well, and we couldn't do what we do without him in several different ways. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's been good. So tell me more about, like, this outlaw car. These things, like, I've seen them, and I've never really been around one because they don't run them here.
Right.
So you take them all the way to Huntsville, and you take them to Montgomery.
Montgomery, Pensacola.
They're just fascinating
Mobile.
looking because, I've run a dirt late model, and they look kind of like one of those, but
it's a really fun car. So what I really would love to do one time is if they put them cars on the really good tires. We run an 8-inch tire, and it's a hard tire, and that, I think they do that because they don't want them faster than the Pro late models. If they put us on that tire, we would be faster than the pros.
Wow.
And so, because there's really tires aren't any cheaper. There's really no reason to put us on this narrow, hard tire. I don't see a logical reason other than to keep the cars slower than the big boys.
Yeah.
And so it's basically the same chassis. We ran a Port City car, a straight rail car, and what straight rail means is that the roll cage is over here in the left door. You're sitting over here in the left door, but there's no roll cage and door bars on the right side. The whole chassis just kind of stops right of the engine. Just right where the engine is, there's a frame rail, and there's nothing over there.
That frame rail is straight all the way back. It doesn't bow in or out.
No,
that's what they call a straight rail.
Yes, you take your drift car, take your passenger seat out, and just imagine, fill in the interior with sheet metal, and there's nothing, probably for the 2 foot inside that right side door, it's nothing but air there. Maybe a little bar,
just to support the body.
Body.
Yeah.
So it's called an offset car, straight rail car is what we call it. So It's just like these Pro late models, and then we have this body with this long sloping nose, little bitty roof, so you get a lot of air coming down the right side. It misses the roof altogether. So we have like a shelf. Oh. And all that air can hit that spoiler. So you got a lot of front downforce, and you get a lot of air on the spoiler. So it's really making a lot of overall downforce. Now, the thing I found is that it probably makes too much front downforce compared to the rear. We have struggled with that car being loose all the time. Everybody does. So I think it would take away from the looks of it, but probably putting a more standard nose on it would probably balance the car a little bit and might make it even faster. We were talking about doing that, but then we sold the car and we're not doing that racing this year. But I feel like the front end overpowers the back end from an aero standpoint.
Just because it's so long.
It's so long and wide, and it's even got these little flares that come up and over the tires. And so the nose is actually much wider than even the fenders, and it just creates a lot of front downforce. It really pins that front end down, and it tends to make the car a little loose. Your front end's so pinned, and it's just hard to get enough traction in the back end. So that's what we worked on all the time. I think that's one reason we won races. We were better at creating rear grip than some of the other guys was. And so we were talking about, I said, we just need to take some of this aero front downforce out of it. And I said, I think we'll have a faster car, but we didn't get around to that.
Well, 2 championships in a row. I mean,
well, yeah, and we won. But and the beauty of it was we raced them twice at Nashville, and we were able to win both of them.
Nice.
And they're not racing them. If they would have kept racing them at Nashville 2 or 3 times a year, we would have kept the car.
Yeah.
And but we wanted to race some here at home.
Yeah.
And we really thought that they were going to do away with the trucks because the truck count is really low.
Yeah.
And we had like 5 or 6 of these Outlaws here in Nashville. So we had as many Outlaws in Nashville as they already had trucks.
Wow.
And much more to draw from. You can't draw any trucks because the rules are just, they're unique.
Yeah.
But the track didn't do that. And so when they decided not to run the Outlaws, everybody sold them. I think John Burns, Tanner Arms, well, not Tanner Arms, but Tanner's brother, Ryan Arms, they have Outlaws, but the other 3 or 4 has been sold.
Wow.
Some, down south. So, we couldn't run them at Nashville. I just said, I don't want to just race Montgomery. I want to get something we can race at Nashville, so we bought the street stock.
We're going to talk more about that.
All right.
We're going to take another break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk street stock, and we're going to tell some more old stories. So,
all right,
so
cool.
If anybody's watching out there that knows Chad or knows an old story, shoot us a message or something and ask us about something that Chad needs to tell us about.
I can do it.
We'll be right back. Hit the TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. Give us a like and a follow. And if you guys think about this show and you know somebody that might want to sponsor this show, picture their big, sign right here behind my head or something like that. Tell them to give us a message. We got some pretty unique packages. We'll put something together for somebody really good. So we'll be right back. Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. Hey guys, listen, if you need a livery on your race car or a wrap done on your commercial vehicle, give the guys down at Graphic Effects in Murfreesboro a call, 615-896-4301. They are the best in the business at what they do. If you need a mural done inside your business or outside on a brick wall even, they can do it. If you need a logo on your garage floor, they can do it. They specialize in commercial wraps, but they can also do the single color stuff, cool looking stripes, anything else you can think of. If you need a banner, if you just need stickers, if you need something cool for your race car, give these guys a call. Graphic Effects down in Murfreesboro, 615-896-4301. Check them out.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Finch with Finch Performance, and we're just going to take a quick little peek around the shop here to see some of the different things that we work on around here. So first up, we've got some chassis in production. We've got a small backlog right now, but we're knocking out some 67 to 72 C10 stuff. We've got a really cool 67 crew cab Chevy here, C10. We've made a custom one-off Apex Predator chassis with long arm suspension all the way around. This thing's going to be pretty badass. 56 F100 with a Coyote 10-speed. Just all we got left here is really getting the supercharger installed, finishing up the wiring and a little bit of the fuel system, get it fired off. And then, of course, we're back on our Ferrari 308 custom project here with the LT5 engine and a Graziano 6-speed transaxle. So this thing is going to be full kill, badass. And that's just some of the things we do here. So we don't just build trucks. We build a lot of everything. Main thing is we have a good time because that's what it's about.
Guys, we're back. Final segment tonight. We're gonna talk a little bit about the. I want to hear about this CRA street stock. I remember when they first popped up and they were going to run that big race at Kentucky Speedway, Is this still the same CRA, and are they still doing like those big? You remember that? Like they wanted to run on the super speedways. They wanted to run Kentucky, and they wanted to run one here, and they want at the big track.
I think it is.
They run at Bristol,
They
right?
do run at Bristol.
Yeah.
I can't really tell you if it's the same. I think it is. CRA has had this division for years.
Frank Kimmel and
Yes.
he had a son that runs some, and
these guys
those guys' names.
And these guys that run real good are from up in that area,
Yeah.
Indiana,
Yeah.
Northern Kentucky. Dylan Oliver races in. A guy named Chuck Barnes is up out of Louisville.
Chuck Barnes, that's who I was trying
Chuck
to think
Barnes
of.
is really good. I've
Yep.
seen him race pro late models. I watched him qualify a car for the All-American 400 one year, and it was amazing. I mean, he drove that car down into turn 3 like the throttle. I thought the throttle was stuck, And
He won the All-American one year, didn't he?
Well, he might have won it this year. The funny thing is when I'm not racing, I don't follow it.
Yeah.
I don't follow
Yeah.
racing. I probably didn't go to the Speedway. I didn't go to the Speedway for probably 5 or 6 years unless they called me and invited me to come. Now,
Yeah.
I never refused to go.
Sure.
I wasn't mad. I wasn't bitter. Nobody.
Sure.
But if they said, "Hey, Chad, we'd like you to come down here. We're doing this or that, and we you're in the Hall of Fame. We're going to put you in the Hall of Fame." And
That's
then as a
cool.
Hall of Fame member, they would bring me down every year and do stuff like that, or they would have a special race, and we're trying to get some of you old farts out here to do this. So, but yeah, I very rarely follow it. So I don't even know why I wanted to get one of these cars. I just saw them race, and I said, "Yeah, that's pretty neat. Them are cool. Them '88 Monte Carlos and Malibus and stuff. Let's just get one of them."
Yeah.
And after I drove one, I told JR, I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm so crazy about this idea of mine. And he's like, "Well, Chad, I done sold the Outlaw, And I said, "Well, all right, then I'm going to make it work." I said, "Let me work on this car and let's make it work." I said, "Surely to goodness I can figure out how to drive this thing." I said, "But I'm telling you right now, I've got to fix this car because we ran 10th the first race." I said, "I cannot drive it any better.
Wow.
This is as good as I can drive. So you're either going to have to hire a much better driver or I've got to fix this car." So we worked on the car, and it was going to be really good. We ran the last race out there, and we missed the pole by a few hundredths of a second, but
wow.
we put a crate engine in our car, and there's no rules. You can run you can run a 700 horsepower motor with a 1100 Dominator on it. I mean, there is no carburetor rules. There's no nothing. But the problem is you're running on this Comanche tire. It's basically a
Like
a
we ran in
super
the
modified
trucks back in
street
the day.
tire. It's a glorified. You take a racing tire and a street tire, and you kind of blend it together.
Yeah,
it's pretty
got
soft.
tread. It's got tread lines in it.
Yeah, it's soft like a race tire, but it's treaded, and the construction of it's
rolls
like it rolls. Yeah, it's a street tire. And if you did put it on a street car, you'd probably wear it out in 2 or 3 weeks. But so it's softer than a street tire, but it's basically a street tire. And so we put an engine in our car that was probably 100 horsepower down, and we barely missed the pole. So I know we had the fastest car.
Yeah.
And, well, like a dummy, I didn't go to tech after qualifying. I didn't hear that. I missed that in the driver's meeting. So we did this group qualifying deal where they put about 5 of us out there at once, I've always raced where you just go one at a time.
Yeah.
And so we go out there. It's like a practice session to me. So we get done with our little group session. I pull off the track, and I pull in the pits, and then it disallowed my time, so I had to start in the back. And we passed a couple cars, and the guy cut me off and cut my tire down. I hit the wall. But so my day went from good to bad to worse. Just like, but that, you're going to have that. That's racing,
How many cars are they fielding in that deal? How many were there?
Well, the first race I was in was a big race. It's a 100-lap race, and I think there was about 23 or 4 of us. And then the last race, I think we had 14, and it was just like a 40-lap race. So, and if we go to Salem, Indiana, or Bristol or somewhere, they have a slew of cars.
Nice.
We will travel, but my philosophy is you got to win at home first.
Well,
if you can't take care of business at home,
sure.
Well, why go to someone else's backyard thinking you're going to beat them there? So we got to protect our own backyard before we worry about going and racing Chuck Barnes and them guys in their backyard. Backyard.
It reminds me of like when I was running the trucks. It reminds me they used to have the sportsman cars on the big track. Mm-hmm. And that's what it reminds me of. That
is pretty much exactly what we have. I think them cars had spoilers, but the guys that are running them, that's exactly, they're getting out their old setups.
Nice.
And the thing is now it's the same cars, the same rules, but it's nicer versions of that same car. It's racing does that. It's you do that in your drift car.
Sure.
Every time you get a drift car, it's a little nicer. It's more expensive, and so these things have evolved, but it's the same package.
Back in the day, it was a Caprice that had been shortened a little, or it was a metric Buick Regal, or it was one of those.
That's what we have. We have a Caprice chassis, and I think it's been shortened, but it's still stock and all the stock components and all. But again, someone didn't take it out of a junkyard and just take it to the three-car garage and build it. Yeah. My car was built on a jig somewhere, and back then these cars weren't built in jigs. They were built in garages,
when I told you about old Joe Howard I used to drive for, he would take when he was welding the cage on the chassis, he would put it on 4 jack stands, and then he would tweak 2 of them down until it would bend a little bit, and then he'd weld the chassis in and automatically kind of put some wedge in the car.
He was wedging the car up. Yep. Exactly.
That's why his cars ran so good at Highland Rim.
That's a real old school trick. But they did that, because the cars were so flimsy then that they would put that kind of, because that way the car just didn't roll over on the right front. You kind of get it strong on that right front. And the guy that taught me everything I knew about racing, my first crew chief, his name was Don Ragsdale. They would take them straight axle beam cars, and they would just heat them axles and roll caster and stuff into them.
Wow.
They knew all that stuff. He taught me all about Ackerman, caster, camber. So really, I've always done my own setups. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, I had a guy teaching me, here's how you set your front end. This is what caster, this is camber, this is wedge, this is stagger, this is all kind of stuff. So I really got into driving and knowing how the car worked, and it's almost like I'm a engineer, but only with race cars. I'm not an engineer in other things, but when it comes to race cars, it is just, I've done it so long. I really am in tune with my car and what's going on with it.
Yeah, I think you could drive this Corvette.
I cannot drive that thing. I can drive it, but I can't drift it. If you wanted me to drive around the track and try not to drift, I think I could do that. But if you want me to go sideways all the way around the track, I'm going to hit about the third wall I come to.
So I'm going to tell you a funny little story. So after I had been racing that truck at the fairgrounds, and after I had gotten into this drifting thing and started learning how to do it and was getting pretty good, I've got to where I can drive this thing pretty good, I entered this little series called Turismo Drift, and they were having one at the fairgrounds. And I thought, man, that's my track. I know all about it. This is going to be good, And we get in there, and they start talking about practice, and they start talking about where the start line's going to be. And I looked at them funny, and they were putting the start line out on the backstretch down at the entrance to turn 3. And I was like, we're going to come around 3 and 4 and start right there? And they said, no, we're going to go backwards down the backstretch into turn 2 and come this way. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, hang on a minute. So here I am with 3 or 4 years worth of racing
the other way,
turning left,
the correct way,
trying to keep it from stepping out, to now I'm sitting in my car at the entrance to turn 3, facing the wrong way down the backstretch, looking at the bank at turn 2 going this way, and I got to go flying down there and get in third gear at almost 100 miles an hour and pitch that thing sideways up at the wall. They want us to ride the wall.
Right.
So not down at the bottom where you're supposed to be. I've got to figure out how to keep the car all the way up at the wall and drag the bumper all the way around the wall, and then at the end, get it woed up and pitch it down into the quarter mile, and then do the quarter mile the right direction. And that's the course we ran.
Can't do that.
And I just, you talk about a pucker factor the first few times.
My brain wouldn't even compute. So
it did not for the first few laps. It was tough.
My first bush ride, I was trying to learn how to road course race.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went out to Bob Bondurant's road course out there, and we were racing these we were driving these Ford SVOs, and I was out there with Hank Parker Jr.,
Oh, yeah.
And he was a cool kid. And Lyndon Amick, his dad owned Amick Farms, one of the biggest chicken farmers in America, you know. So, and Billy Parker, Hank Parker's little brother, was out there, and there's 3 or 4 of us, and so we was out there trying to learn. And so, anyways, one of the things we did. You got in his car, and the guy rode with you, and he had some device he could take this wheel, and it would pick the back end of the car up.
Yeah.
And so he was doing this, and I would be in a left-hand turn, and he would pick up the back end of the car, you know, and I would, in a way, drift. You'd lose the back end of the car.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to do it going the other way. And I don't know that I like the best left-hand driver I ever saw. I'm certainly wasn't. I'm sure I wasn't. But after we got done with this exercise, he said, "You're really good left-hand." He said, "You're about as good driving to the left as anybody I've had." He said, "You're not so hot going to the right." I said, "Yeah, no duh."
I ain't never done it before.
I'm one-trick pony there. I only go left.
Well, just to make you feel better, when I do clinics and teach it, it's unnatural to drift driver's side first. It's unnatural to turn the car right, the car step out, and control that. Nobody gets it on the first time.
Sure.
It's very unnatural. Everybody kicks their car out a little bit when they're turning left at a red light. You know, that's cool. That feels neat. It's very unnerving to do it the other way the first time.
It is.
So
I believe it. Yeah, it's just wrong. I mean, you know, I don't know what to say. You guys can do it. I take my hat off. But
so let me tell you this story about our buddy JR, and you need to ask JR about this. So I got an opportunity. I had a little sponsor. Got an opportunity to race a couple of truck races. This is golly 4 or 5 years ago now, 6 or 7 years ago now. It's been a minute, and we went down there. Well, I helped him put the truck back together. And we were going to run some truck races. I had a guy who was a client of mine down in Murfreesboro that was a big construction guy. And we were going to... Is that truck right there on the wall over there? Can't see it anymore.
I've seen
you remember that
picture,
truck? Uh-huh. Went out there and ran some races. Well, the first time that we went to go practice, okay, it's been 8 or 9 years since I've been in a vehicle on the fairgrounds of any kind. I completely forgot what I was doing. Like, no idea. And I go out there. Willie Allen's out there making fun of me for being up too high in the corner. You know, clean that off for me up there, he said. You know, so for later in the race. You know, I literally had totally forgotten what I was doing, but I was trying to remember, and I was trying to go and run and do this and that in that first practice session. And I'll never forget. I pulled back in the pit and was unbuckling and got out of the truck. And JR comes stomping down there. He goes, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You're all over the place." I had turned my back one time. You come out of the corner so sideways I could see the other side of the number over there. And it made me realize that. So 8 years prior, when I was running a truck, I was terrified of a loose truck. Fast forward, I've been drifting for 8 years, and now I'm back in that same truck. Chad, I had no idea I was anywhere close to out of control. I was just driving it.
Yeah.
And I was driving that thing so sideways that it scared JR to death. You'll have to ask him about that.
I will.
Because he was mad as a hornet. I was like, I'm sorry.
You say, didn't that look good? I mean,
he was mad. It was funny.
Truck drifting you're going to see today.
It was hilarious. Yeah, like I'd love to see some video of that, but you know, we get videos and pictures all over the place of what we do, but nobody does that at the fairgrounds, I guess. So, So, Chad, I'm going to ask you something here. We've got about 5 minutes left.
All
this
right.
has been a great show. Tell me your favorite moment, your best memory from the fairgrounds. Tell me one last really good story, man.
Well,
Put you on the spot.
Oh gosh. I would probably say probably the thing, it probably wasn't my best moment, but the most probably iconic thing was that in the 95 season, at the first race of the year, and I was racing, and my rival, I guess he was a rival. I don't consider as much as a rival, but I think other people thought it was Joe Buford.
Oh, yeah.
And me and Joe were locking horns, and he was running good. Joe was really aggressive. He's a really aggressive driver and had really good fast cars. And so we were in a race down there, and 2 or 3 laps to go, I passed him. And but I couldn't get away from him. We were the same speed. and we come off turn 4, and he hooked me, and we wrecked across the start finish line, and I won the race going backwards.
Nice.
And there's pictures of it. I am backwards, white smoke and everything, and I crossed the start finish line, and there's a picture of the guy throwing a checker flag.
Nice.
And so I think that was something you never forget. I mean, I've had a lot of memories, and then the other best memory was when I ran an All-American 400 in 1993.
Wow.
Darrell Waltrip, Jeff Purvis,
Wow.
Bob Seneker, you name it. This is the best of the best. That's
Wow.
an All-American 400. So I was in this race, and I led the race. I had to pass Bob Seneker to take the lead, and Darrell Waltrip was in third.
Wow.
And I came down the front straight. I stuck my hand out the window, and I waved. And like Bob Jenkins and Benny Parsons was doing the thing, and Benny would talk to me and stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, Bob Jenkins said, there must be something wrong with his car. He's sticking his hand out the window. And Benny Parsons said, no, he's waving to the crowd. Boys, I'm leading the All-American 400. He knew exactly why I did it.
Yeah.
Him being a driver. So that
Yeah.
was a cool moment, too.
Yeah.
And that was on TV, So that was like my first time to lead a big race on TV.
That's really cool.
So that was fun.
That was back when that stuff was on
It was in
TNN.
TNN, 1992, I believe that was. So, I mean, good grief, that's 32 years ago.
Wow. Holy cow. You didn't have to say it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, something else. Yeah, that was a big deal. That was a big moment.
Man, that's really cool. That's really neat.
Cool.
I'm glad you could come tonight, man. I've had a blast telling these old stories. We might have to do this again sometime. I know you've got more stories than that.
I mean, I've got so many stories I don't even know when I start. I can't stop. I like to talk. Probably like DW.
Yeah.
I don't have as many stories as him, but I've got a few. So it's been a blast for me to come in and talk about it. You've kind of sparked some memories that I probably had buried down deep,
Suppressed.
Yeah.
Some suppressed memories.
Yeah, that's right.
Corky Burdette says, hope you're doing well, old friend.
Yeah, tell Corky that's great. I appreciate him
That's pretty cool.
sending in a message.
Nice.
This has been great.
Fantastic. All right, guys, we're going to kind of wrap it up here. It's been a great night. We got a couple of really cool things coming up I want to be sure and tell you about. While we're at it, go ahead and hit that like and follow button on Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. We've eclipsed our 1,200 followers on TikTok, so we might be able to look at doing some TikTok live stuff here in the future. So that's kind of cool. You got to have 1,000 or so, and we struggled for a long time to get there, but all of a sudden one video skyrocketed. So we had a guy here that's he used to run sprint cars, a friend of mine down in Alabama named David Counts, and they're running dirt cars now, and he was talking about rear steer in a dirt car.
Oh.
And we were comparing that to drifting because, a dirt car looks like it's sideways, but it ain't. I mean, it is. You're counter steering, but the axles turn like that, and it's rear steering around that
It's
track.
not sliding much anymore.
Yeah,
it's just the way it's driven
and
around.
I had
the track.
never heard that before, so we were talking about that, and that video got almost 60,000 views. I mean, it just went crazy for us, so that was really good. But we've got the first annual Music City Muscle Car Challenge this Saturday at the Nashville Super Speedway. Something that Finch and I have put together. It's going to be a car show. There'll be actually class trophies this time, and we'll be out there doing our autocross deal and our drifting deal like we always do. We're going to drift the road course at the Nashville Super Speedway, and we're going to do it the man's way. We're going to launch down pit road. We're going to hit that access road at 100 miles an hour sideways. Have you ever driven? Did you ever get to race at the Super Speedway?
I sat on the pole out there.
You did,
in
didn't you?
2004, yes. I
Okay,
think I finished 5th or 6th.
All right, so I'm going to give you a great comparison because you'll understand this. You'll know what this feels like, sort of. So when you left your pit stall and you launched down and started into the blend road, at the end of pit road where the grass stops is where we pitch it sideways. And we carry that all the way around.
The access road.
The access road to where the road course starts and turns that little button hook to the left.
Yeah.
It's about 6 or 7 seconds around through there, and you got to be carrying a good 80, 90 miles an hour to do it.
Well, at least there's not a wall there.
That's right.
But that's I mean, I would have said gnarly back when I was a kid. That's gnarly. I don't know if that's still a word, but we need to bring it back because that's what that is.
Yeah, that's right. It might be dope nowadays. Is that what they say nowadays, Jimmy? I don't know. we're all too old for all that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe one of these days
He's like, oh my God, these
know
dudes,
either.
squares, man.
Maybe one of these days I can get you out there and strap you in the passenger seat.
I'm
for
gonna
one of
need a
those.
lot of room. Maybe an empty Walmart parking lot is where I need to start.
We'll get it figured out.
All right.
Guys, it's been a great night. We really appreciate you guys listening and hanging out with us. We'll have some really good little 2 to 3 minute deals to go up on TikTok on this one. This one will really be good. As for now, we're done for the night. We will see you next time on Get Slydewayz with Barry Clapp. Hit that like button.